finger start, or where the sweet potato ends and where your finger starts. So they do have a condition in their eyes. It's called rod monochromacy. That means that they only have rod cells in their eyes and no cone cells.
Oh, wow.
So we have cone cells in our eyes that allows us to see color, but since they don't have those cells, they are colorblind. The rod cells are what picks up motion, so they actually have a lot more rod cells in their eyes than we do, so they see motion a lot more easily, and it's actually a little bit enhanced for them. And those rod cells work best in dim lighting.
He's a lot softer than I thought he would be.
Yeah. And they do have something that's called bright blindness as well, so in the daylight, it's even more difficult for them to see because the rod cells function best in dim lighting. When it's real bright, they don't really work the best. That's why they move around a lot more in the evenings and at night. And then what they do see, it's not just in black and white, it's basically just kind of blobs and shapes. He can't really distinguish who's who or what's what. You know, he sees the figures of us in here, but he can't really distinguish who people are. But since their eyesight is so poor, their sense of hearing and their sense of smell is actually pretty heightened. So he does recognize my voice and he knows who I am just because he hears me. And that's the same way for John. When we first got him, John was his sole caregiver. And he was the only one that was in there just talking to him every day, spending a lot of time with him. And he, you know, really got to know, you know, his voice by that. So in the morning, sometimes if he's having kind of a slow morning where he's not really wanting to come down for us, or he's just kind of hanging out there in his hammock up at the top of his 20-foot enclosure, all John really has to do is poke his head in there and say, "Hey, Flash," in his voice, and he'll start coming down pretty quickly for him.
Flash.
That or a banana. They do have a really good sense of smell, so if we go in there and kind of have a banana and start blowing it up towards him, he'll smell that pretty quick. Yeah. Must have found his appetite. You can also see how tiny those pupils are. Just with little tiny dots. They do have a really narrow field of vision. So it's essentially like if you were just to cup your hands like this together and look through it, that's about all they see. They don't really have any kind of peripheral. So in the wild, something that moves towards or by a sloth at any rate of speed kind of startles them, and they just want to get away from it. So the first line of defense for a sloth is just evade that threat. They don't want to have to deal with it. They don't want to, have any type of conflict like that. So they just want to get to the very end of that branch, away from whatever it is that has startled them. And if they get to the end of that branch, and it actually was a jaguar or an ocelot or some type of that was on that branch after the sloth, it's kind of best scenario if they both ended up getting to the end of that branch and fell out of that tree. Because the sloth is built to withstand falls from up to 100 feet in the air and be completely unharmed by that. The jaguar is probably not going to be as lucky. Their goal, any cat's goal when it falls, is to try to land on all 4 feet. And trying to land on all 4 feet from a height of 100 feet in the air, you're probably going to break all 4 legs. So that cat's probably not going to survive that fall, where the sloth will just get back up and go right back up that tree where it came from. He definitely found his appetite.
So I was watching a video, and somebody said how long does it take them to get, like, I think it was 40 yards or something?
I don't know the exact rate of speed that they go at. It can definitely differ depending on, if he said, maybe not that big. He gets really picky sometimes. I'll offer him one end of the veggie, and he won't like that one. I'll turn it in and offer him the other end, and he'll want that one. So sometimes he just gets picky. But sometimes the angle that you hold it to is kind of important. So if you go from the side of his mouth, sometimes it's kind of more difficult for him to wedge that around to where he can actually eat it. So you kind of have to go straight on with it. But they can move, quicker in short bursts of energy if they need to, if they're startled or they're trying to get away from something. But for the most part, they're generally pretty slow. I can take a picture of both of you guys too, stand next to me if you want me to. Especially while it's extended down like that, it's pretty cool. Flash. he posed for that one.
Now, how old is he?
He's almost 7 years old. So when we got him, he was already 3. And we got him from a facility that was basically just observation before, you know, his whole life, he was just observation. He was never held or handled in that way. And so that's why he's not comfortable with being held. Now Zoe, you guys have booked the VIP experience, so you'll get to actually hold Zoe here in just a little bit. And it's a completely different experience with her because you do actually hold her. She does genuinely enjoy the time that she gets to spend with people. Whereas Flash, you know, sees this as a food source, and you know, he does, yeah, he does enjoy coming down and interacting because he gets his treats like this. Of course, he always gets his food, even if he has a slower morning and is not wanting to come down to be hand fed. Of course, he always still gets his food in his bowl.
There he is, I see him.
But it takes a lot of conditioning. Takes a lot of conditioning and everything from a very young age.
I was in Australia years ago and got the pledge and hi, thinking he was staying right there.
And there's actually another one in that red pouch. It's just really tiny.
Oh, probably in there sleeping.
Yeah. And there's only about a month difference between those two. They do grow really quick when they're
They're
babies.
just staying there.
How cute.
I think that little hammock there has about had it. She may be about to fall out of that thing.
You hungry? Yeah.
Green beans are his favorite most of the time.
You're so amazing, Flash.
I was expecting my hair to be so much more corny.
Yeah. Yeah, well, when you see pictures and videos of wild sloths, you know, that have been gathered that moss and algae and everything like that on them, they are pretty coarse. And all sloths' hairs, if you were to look at an individual hair of any sloth under a microscope, you would see a lot of tiny micro cracks all throughout those hairs. And that's what allows them in the rainforest to be able to start to gather that rainwater on them, and that was what will form the moss and algae. And they rely on that in the wild for camouflage, but it's also really important for them because they have a symbiotic relationship with moths that live on their backs and all throughout their fur, and those moths will feed on that moss and algae. And they do have a symbiotic relationship with them, so the sloths need those moths, just like the moths need the sloths. So it's really important, and if one didn't have the other one would not be able to survive. So it is a really sensitive system. So how it works is that once a week, when the sloth comes down to use the bathroom, they always use the same tree, they go down the same side of that tree, and they always go to the same pile that they always go to. And that's not because they're creatures of habit or because they're trying to fertilize their own tree. It's actually because they're going down there to let those moths repopulate in the waste pile of the sloth. And so when they come down there, the only place that those moths can live in the entire world is on the back of a sloth. They can't fly around the environment to look for that sloth. They have to have direct contact. So when they come down, the sloth comes down to use the bathroom, they kind of wiggle their little booties around on the ground, and that signals those moths to come down and they lay their eggs, and then they'll crawl back up before they lose their ride. And then it takes 3 weeks for those eggs then to develop into larvae, that larva then to develop into moths, and then those moths will crawl back up onto the sloth, and the cycle will be repeated over and over again. And that's really important to the sloth because the sloth will eat a portion of those moths, and that's their protein source. So they do have really low protein requirements, but what they do require, those requirements are met by the moths. But the most important part of the symbiotic relationship is that the sloth will actually lick up a portion of the moth's waste itself, and the waste of the moth is where the sloth gets the bacteria in order to digest its food. So if the sloths did not have those moths on their backs in the wild, they would not have the bacteria or the means to be able to digest their food. So the bacteria that they have in their gut is really sensitive to temperature changes. And in the rainforest, if the temperature drops overnight or there's a storm that blows through or something, it will, it will deteriorate a lot of that bacteria that's in their gut that they're using to digest their food. And if that happens, then, the sloths need a way to get that bacteria back up so that they can continue to digest their food. If they don't, then they're not gonna be able to, and so that can be problematic. But for captive sloths, we don't worry about that because they're in a controlled environment. It's always 78 degrees in here year round, and that's the temperature that bacteria thrives in. And so we don't ever let the temperature drop, therefore that bacteria never deteriorates, and they don't need those moths. So they're not born with that bacteria colony. They have to establish it somewhere, and that's actually from their mother. So around day 3 of the sloth life, it will crawl onto the chest of the mother, and while she's eating, it kind of bubbles up in the corners of her mouth, and so baby will smell that and lick some of that up. And it's already mixed with her saliva, so the bacteria that she has in her gut is also in her saliva. So then the baby will get just a little bit of mom's bacteria colony to then start to germinate and colonate and develop its own bacteria colony throughout about 4 or 5 months. And then after that baby is weaned, then it's got that, full bacteria colony in its gut to be able to digest its food. And it will keep that the rest of its life as long as it's in a controlled environment. But if we were to do something as simple as, in the fall or winter, leave a door cracked accidentally overnight, come back in, that next morning, that sloth's bacteria colony could be completely wiped out. And there would not be a way for that sloth to get that bacteria colony back up. And that would be absolutely detrimental for that sloth because there's not a way to replenish that bacteria colony. So that's why we always tell people that owning a sloth as a pet is a terrible idea. Although it's legal, and you don't need any type of licenses or anything to own a sloth. The sloth's life expectancy after it's given to a member of the general public is roughly 2.5 weeks. Because just the stress of going through something like that, a lot of times, there's no reputable breeder of sloths in the U.S. that would sell to somebody of the general public that had no prior knowledge of owning sloths. And so a lot of the times what happens is that there is a trade of wild sloths that's not illegal. And so a lot of the sloths that comes through, and people will get from online have been sloths that have been brought from the rainforest. The stress alone from being taken from the rainforest is enough to completely wipe out that bacteria colony, and that sloth has a very poor life expectancy after that. So a lot of people are not aware of that. Obviously, you would probably not buy a sloth if you knew that it was coming from the rainforest.
I can't imagine just thinking I want a sloth anyway.
Well, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people
It's my
that.
spirit animal.
Yeah. And that's why we always have to preface it too, especially if we're on a live stream or something, because a lot of people will see that we're interacting with Flash, and it's like, yeah, I want a sloth. Where'd you get your sloth from? I want to have a sloth that I can play with and stuff. And it's like, the sloths that we have here are not pet sloths. They are ambassador animals, and they serve to be education for the public. While you don't necessarily need a license to own a sloth, we have all of the licenses and regulations and everything basically as the city does, and we're inspected very often for all of our.
So how much does he eat in a day?
So on average, it does depend. Depends a lot on where they're at in their week. So it takes about 7 to 10 days for everything to pass through to where they can go to the bathroom. And so it depends on, right before they go to the bathroom, they're feeling pretty full because they expel about 1/3 of their entire body weight when they do go.
Oh, wow.
So they don't eat a whole lot the day before. But then right afterwards, the next day, they're eating ravenously. Yeah. And so, but on average, they eat about 10% of their body weight every day. So, yeah. You taking me a quick cat nap, buddy?
Yep, he's over, he's making that.
He takes a lot of those.
I've got 8, I'm done.
Yeah. And that's kind of a cool thing about a sloth as well. It, every 7 to 10 days they go to the bathroom. It actually takes their digestive tract 30 days for everything to go through it completely. So the first bite of food that he took this morning is going to be another, it's going to be a month before that comes out the other end.
Wow.
And so because of that, they only have one-way valves in their digestive tract that allows food to go in but not back out. And so they can't just continue to eat and eat and eat because that's going to back up pretty quickly, and they don't have the ability to vomit like we do. And so as soon as their system tells them, hey, I'm getting full, you need to stop eating, they will completely shut it off. They will not eat until their system starts to tell them, to eat again. And that could be just a couple hours or the rest of the day. And so he does take quite frequent, a lot of little breaks like that where he just has to think about whether or not he wants to continue to eat.
He's like, I got a snack, I'm done.
Still
his eyes closed.
He did.
Let me break out the rice here. He really loves this rice mixture. He doesn't necessarily need it. He gets all the nutrition that he needs from the veggies and the spinach and everything that he eats. But it's just kind of a little high value treat that we give him sometimes.
He's like,
Yeah, and it definitely wakes him up. And he knows, they all know when I open up that fridge,
Right.
they're probably about to get something.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. You excited, aren't you?
Come on, bud. See if I can get you to wake up and come over here for us. Okay. Yeah, come on. He's got me trained for sure. And then if you guys want to, you can either feed him out of this bowl or you can hand feed him. It's pretty cool to, put some of that rice in your hand and just have an open hand like that. And he can extend all the way down and he'll actually stretch out
Oh,
and have it like that. It's kind of cool to feel his tongue on your hand too. And he'll hold your hand with that claw. You can get some more, just dump it in your hand there.
I'm so cool. I'll get you some more. I'll get you some more, baby. I know you like that.
And those claws that he's got there will continue to grow throughout his life. They just slowly are kind of ground down by when he climbs on the bark and the branches that he's climbing on. We'll slowly keep those ground down.
You know, can't make a breast.
So a lot of people are kind of curious about how they're able to just hang like that so effortlessly. I mean, he's only hanging by his two back feet, so that would be the equivalent of us just hanging by our two, our hands. And that's pretty difficult for us to do, because clamped down like that around the branch is actually our stress state. So to hold on to a branch for us would be using energy, and it's harder for us to do that, whereas just open-handed is our relaxed state. But for them, closed claws around the branch is their relaxed state. So he's expending no energy right now whatsoever to hang completely upside down like that. For him to actually let go of that branch, loosen up those claws and straighten out or reach for the next branch, that's when he's using energy and muscle to do that. So if a sloth were to pass away holding on to a branch similar to that sloth would continue to hang there until something either rotted or something knocked them off of that branch. Because for us, if we're sedated or we pass away or something, this is our relaxed state, so this is how we're going to stay. We're not all of a sudden going to tense up. So it's the same for them. This is their relaxed, so they're not going to tense up and straighten up those claws. And it's really interesting to see that firsthand, because I always tell people that, but it wasn't until 2 or 3 weeks ago that the vet came to do his annual exam, and he was doing some blood work and getting everything working for him, and so we had to sedate him for that. And after those sedatives kicked in, he was holding on to that branch. Everything just went stiff, and I kid you not, continued to hang on to that branch just like he was prior. Did not let go whatsoever. He was completely asleep. You could touch his nose, touch around his face and everything. He was not reactive whatsoever, but was continuing to hang on to that branch. And so we worked on him hanging there for like 5 or 10 minutes before us just moving his body around and everything slowly kind of started to loosen up his claws.
Am I not going fast enough for you? I'm sorry.
And then we then we had to actually unhook his claws up off of the branch to be able to get him down. Pulling down on a sloth, if I were to try to take him and pull down right now, I'm not going to get him off of that branch. You actually have to, it's kind of like a coat hanger. You got to take it off. Pulling down on it is pretty difficult to get them to undo.
I don't figure the medicine would have,
Huh?
so the medicine did relax him, but all he's just.
No, he was completely relaxed, so that's what it is.
And
But
it's just-
stiff like this is relaxed for them, and so it's just opposite for what you think about for us. That medicine made him completely relaxed. He was completely asleep, but those claws are, stiff like that is his relaxed state. So it was really interesting.
That place, like his hand, is so soft.
Yep. on his paw pads is actually pretty sensitive, since they do have really poor eyesight. They use those paw pads to kind of determine where they're at, what they're grabbing a hold of. And if you need to get some more rice, you can just get some more out of that.
Good buddy. Oh my. What's your favorite?
It definitely is.
Was it like rice and carrots?
Yeah, it's brown rice, and it's shaved up sweet potatoes. And then the brown that's in there is actually really high quality dog food that's been soaked in water and then mixed into it. So that's where, for our younger sloths, that's kind of the mixture that we raise them on, and we slowly start to incorporate vegetables and things like that into it. So that's where they get their protein requirements from. Yeah, you can get some more.
I think that's your favorite, ain't it?
Is this your favorite?
By far.
They sound like the green beans too.
Yeah. And then he'll get on kicks where he really likes the sweet potatoes too. But in the wild, they eat about 95% leaf material. So we try to replicate that as well as we can here. Throughout our encounters, we'd give higher value treats like veggies and rice and stuff like that. But for the most part, they get about 75% leaf material. They get baby spinach, romaine lettuce, different things like that. They get all that in the evenings.
That good?
Now, we only have 2-toed sloths here in captivity, so you can see he has 2 on the front, and on the back he actually has 3. All sloths have 3 toes on their back feet.
Alright, I gotta get you some more, buddy.
But it's the front feet where they differ.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not confessing it. I apologize.
So,
He's like, just hand me the bowl.
we only have the 2-toed sloths here in captivity because we can vary their diets. Obviously, they're not going to get rice or sweet potatoes or zucchini, squash, stuff like that in the wild. They're just eating those leaves of the Sarcopia trees. But the 3-toed sloths are extremely difficult to keep in captivity because they can really only eat the leaves of the Sarcopia trees. They can't really vary their diet much from that. They do have really specific requirements for that.
He's sweet. He's so sweet. Is that good? Is that worth waking up for? Yeah? You're gonna get you some more. Here.
Where are you guys from?
Near Chattanooga.
Okay.
Dunlap.
Yeah. How'd you hear about us?
We watch videos all the time online.
Mm-hmm.
It's my
Been a fan for a
50th
while.
birthday.
Oh, well. Happy late birthday.
Now I need a little more.
I hope you're not going
He gets very impatient.
His nose is cold.
Mhm. His nose is really soft too. Usually it's pretty wet because they do have high humidity requirements, and so his enclosure is misted once a day.
Oh,
Because of that, his nose is usually pretty moist. And his enclosure goes up 20 feet, and so we do have a misting system that goes up with PVC piping all the way up to the top where we mist it. Now Zoe's enclosure is just 10 foot, so we do have to hand mist her enclosure, but we still make sure that both of them get it once a day. We have gauges in there and everything to monitor that. And you can kind of see as he's hanging there where on his belly, the hair actually parts down the middle of his belly and goes down to his back. If you think about a dog, that's kind of opposite. Now his belly is really sensitive, so we try not to touch it. That's all right. The only time that the belly of a sloth is ever really touched is if they're being attacked by something or if they've got a baby on them. And so it's a pretty sensitive area for them. Just don't want to startle them too much. But it's backwards to, dogs or cats. They part down the middle of their back and go down. But sloth is upside down all the time, and so it's kind of, normal for them. And their hair kind of continues to grow throughout their life too, so you can see his is pretty long. Kind of gives him a really crazy hairdo when he's upside down like that, because all of it's kind of laying down. But Zoe's is a lot shorter, and Dash, our baby sloth, is even shorter.
Aw.
I'm trying, buddy. I'm trying to get you some more.
He's got a good appetite now, huh?
Yeah, he ate good, the veggies too.
That's awesome.
quite demanding. And Zoe does too. We'll feed her a little bit too when we go in there if she gets hungry.
Good.
But if you were to look at the skeletal structure or just the skull of a sloth and not have any prior knowledge of that sloth or that animal, you would think they were definitely like top of the food chain, you know, just ripping through the trees, 100 mile an hour, tearing things out of the branches. But in reality, to know what they actually are, it's pretty ironic. You know, if you kind of look at him, his arms are pretty long. They're twice as long as his back legs there, about as long as his entire body, the torso. And the skull, they don't have any teeth right here in the very front, but they do have 4 really sharp canines in the sides, and then a lot of molars in the back that are actually all pointed instead of flat like ours are. And so you think about a lot of other animals that, you know, are top of the food chain, kind of have teeth similar to that. But in reality, to see what they are is pretty funny. So I do think that the Lord definitely has a sense of humor when he was making some of these animals.
You finished? Yeah, pretty good there, buddy.
You're so handsome.
Well, since he didn't finish the rest of these veggies, I'm going to chop these up just a little bit more so we can give them to Zoe. Her mouth is just a little bit smaller.
You gonna run away now?
He's like, yeah,
He says, if you ain't got no more veggies or rice for me, then what's the point?
I had some on my finger that not enough to get you going.
He's done.
You did pretty good this morning, though.
You do it good.
Some of them
You do it good, buddy. You're so much more soft than I know. It's like you fed me.
Let's see. It's right out time for us to go in with Zoe, and so if you guys want to kind of see how when he's on a mission and he's really wanting to go somewhere or somewhere that he's, you know, wanting to do, yeah, you got 10 minutes off your hands.
Can we just leave them up here and just do that here? Is that okay? Will she bother them?
Yeah.
Okay. When they're both in the shot, it looks awesome.
Okay. Yep.
Where y'all from?
Dunlap, close to Chattanooga.
Oh yeah, super close. I mean, like across the river, super
Well,
close.
yes, across the river.
That's where all the good rocks come from when you like want to decorate your house.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right. It's my 50th birthday.
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
This was her surprise.
Were you surprised?
Yeah.
That's
I've been
awesome.
talking about this. We watched the live on
Oh,
it.
good.
Today.
You'll be able to go back and watch this one on YouTube,
Oh,
so you can go back and watch it.
All right.
I'll call her and be like, turn on one eye.
And we're trying to get a little bit more structured with it, but sometimes I'm like, I gotta take a break. And she's just gonna come out here with her.
Pick whichever suit you like. Yeah, we're so excited to be here.
Oh, it's a blast.
Alrighty. So this is Zoe. Zoe is our sloth that we do actually hold. But she likes to be held and pet in a very specific way. She needs to be supported underneath her booty like this. Sometimes when she's down low enough, you can kind of set her down in your lap. But when we pet her, we want to stick to the very middle of her back and do nice slow strokes just like this. She does get really sensitive towards her sides. So sometimes it can be kind of difficult to distinguish where's her back and where her side is because they're really limber and her lumbar spine has a few extra vertebrae in it that allows her to kind of twist and turn, and sometimes she gets exploratory, but we just try to stay to the middle of her back as best we can, and her belly is definitely just a no-no area because it is really sensitive. So when she goes to turn around here, she'll turn her legs and she'll wrap around your torso like this, and then after she wraps around you, then you'll support her underneath her booty. She's going to be looking for some snacks here this morning, so I know, girl. She says, where they at?
Zoe.
She puts a lot of faith in people when she's leaning back like that. She's like, I don't know you at all, but I'm sure you're going to support me.
As long as you have favorite.
She's been this way since the moment that we got her, so all of the weird little quirks that she has now, she had even when she was a baby. And she showed us pretty early on that, you know, the areas that she didn't particularly like to be pet, or that she didn't like her hair to be disturbed and moved upwards, or things like that. And we kind of went hands off in those areas because she was our first baby sloth that we had, so we were trying to do everything right. And we never really worked with her on those areas, we just kind of went hands off, and so because of that, she's still really sensitive to that. Now with Dash, our other baby, he's like 10 months old now, and we're trying a lot harder with him, that while he's eating, while he's distracted, to slowly touch his sides and slowly touch his arms a little bit, yeah, just to slowly acclimate into all different types of touches and everything like that, because naturally, a sloth is not going to be born wanting to hold on to people. This is not something that you're going to find if you try to go out in the rainforest and just pick up a sloth. It would be essentially the difference between holding a house cat, like Zoe, and a feral cat, which would be a wild sloth. So you probably, she's about 17, 18 months old now. But she was not born this way. She was born into an ambassador program, and she was conditioned from a very young age to enjoy this type of interaction. Whereas Flash did not have that same raising. Now Flash was born and raised in captivity, just like Zoe, but they came from totally different programs. And so the breeder that we got Zoe from worked with her before she was even weaned from her mother, where he actually had his mother's clicker trained to know that when the breeder came up and made that clicker sound, that the mom was going to get just a little snack, and he was going to borrow her baby for just like 15, 20 seconds while still standing right next to mom, and that slowly would acclimate that baby to you know, human interaction. And so mom's never stressed out because baby's never taken away and she's got a snack, and baby's never stressed out because mom's never stressed out. And it's just become something that's normal for them. If you wanted to feed her this too, I know you're doing videos and stuff, but if you wanted to do that, that's up to you. So it is something that, you know, was still instilled into her from a very young age. So kind of our idea behind doing the encounters and everything that we offer here with sloths that have been born and raised in captivity, bred ethically and in an appropriate situation to interact with them, so that people would come and you know, spend time with sloths like this, rather than go down to somewhere that they're native to and interact with the sloths down there. Because oftentimes people are kind of, the thought process is that
Okay, I'm burning, baby. I'm not doing as fast enough for you.
but most of the time people that go down there and they go to somewhere like Costa Rica or Guatemala, they go on a cruise ship, they get off and somebody's holding a baby sloth and they want to just, you know, hold that baby sloth because it's the cutest thing in the world. But most of the time those sloths have been taken from the rainforest and people are just unaware of that. And so we kind of offer this experience here so that people would have another way to interact with sloths and kind of get their sloth fix somewhere that they've been ethically bred for it. And rather than disturbing the wild sloth, because we already talked about how sensitive that whole ecosystem is that's on their back. And if that's disturbed by, you know, somebody trying to hold them or interact with them or just pet them, that can be really disturbing to the bacteria that they have on their backs that they're using. You know, if they ingest that, and that's how they digest their food. So it's really sensitive for them.
You're not going fast enough here.
I know.
She's like, come on here.
Hold on. But you made that, don't get too fast.
Like, I'm living the life.
Yeah. She gets very demanding with her food as well.
How are you? Not you. Not you, sweet girl.
It's like, if you're gonna hold me, you gotta feed me. You're not doing it the right way.
I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn this thing.
You can see how much shorter her claws are compared to Flash's. So Flash is almost 7, and she's only like 17 months. So as they grow, as they get older, so do their claws. They will grow as well. And as they climb and everything, they'll slowly kind of grind those down. So Zoe's are just a little bit more pointed on the end, just because she doesn't climb as much as Flash is. Flash does.
Let me get some more. I know, I get you some more.
She's a little diva and she stays in her hammock most of the time. The only time she ever climbs is if we're walking in there not paying attention to her. She's trying to get to us so that we can, pay attention to her. Or if she's climbing over to get her food in the evenings.
I'm getting it for you. I'm getting it for you.
And here's some more here too. You get them low.
Oh, yeah.
Right as she works it to the back of her mouth, she's like, all right, it's time. Where's the next one? So has this always been on you guys' bucket list?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You'll have to, since you guys are kind of close to us, you'll have to keep an eye on our website. In the next month or so, we should be getting in our fourth baby sloth, or our fourth sloth, third baby sloth. And when we first get them, they're only like 1.5 pounds.
Oh.
They're extremely small. Of course, they go through a while of, quarantine. It'll be a 30-day quarantine, and then they're slowly starting to get those encounters added on.
Oh, sorry. My
That's all
bad.
right.
Like
Just leave it.
No, that was a good piece. That was a good piece. I'm gonna bring it up here so she can see the beautiful grass.
Oh, you got it?
So even if Zoe were to be fully booked for the whole day, she would not encounter for more than 2 hours a day total. We don't ever book them back to back to back to back with encounters. While she would do it, she does genuinely enjoy and actively seek out human interaction. Too much of any good thing can be bad. And so they do need time to be able to, just decompress and do whatever they want to do, take naps. They do sleep a lot throughout the day. And so they need time to be able to just, relax and have time for themselves, because at the point that we're at now, with if we were to have her booked totally for the day, she'd have an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. And she's still at the point where even if she has a fully booked day in the afternoon around 4 o'clock when she's done for the day, I could go in there and start cleaning up her enclosure, and she's still climbing through the branches at me, trying to get me to pick her up, because that's what she enjoys doing. And sometimes when she's doing that, and if I'm not paying attention to her and I'm evading her, just trying to get my job done, trying to clean up her enclosure, she'll be going. They do make little whimpering noises like that when they're distressed about something.
Let me take a picture. Alright, like this. Here we go.
Those are good. She is.
She's like, this, I wasn't paying attention to me.
You're so sweet. So sweet.
We'll fit there too. Thank you. And so you can see the darkest spot that she is on her head there is basically what color she was all over when we first got her. So she was about 6 months old when we first got her, and she was real dark like that. When they're first born, they're born with darker hair because they're not born with that moss and algae that they use for camouflage. They blend into the chest of the mother a lot more if they're dark, rather than if they were light, they would stand out a lot more. And as they get just a little bit older, they'll start to grow into their adult hair, which is lighter in color. And they don't shed out their baby hair, it just eventually grows into their adult hair, which is why Flash's hair is a lot longer compared to Zoe's. And Dash, he's not down here right now, but he's a lot more like a dark mocha color almost.
Oh, I've
almost
seen
like,
him, I
yeah.
think on video. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a lot darker. He's lightened up a lot since what he was when we first got him, but yeah, he's a lot darker because he's younger. But we got both Dash and Zoe from the same breeder, and the next girl that we get, we'll name her Chloe, and we'll show that she's coming from the same breeder as well. But that'll be our last baby sloth. We're not planning on getting any more.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to.
What's their average life expectancy?
So in the wild, there's not been a scientist that has been able to track one single sloth from birth until natural, geriatrics. But in captivity, the oldest sloth that we know of that was born and raised in captivity lived to be 54 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he actually just passed away last August, so just about a year ago. And he was in a zoo in Germany. So it's not typical. Typically in captivity, they live to be around 20 years old. But they can live to be longer than that. A lot of it depends on the diet that they're fed, because obviously this diet is not something that they're naturally exposed to in the rainforest. So we do try to mimic it as similar to the rainforest as you can. So sometimes there's a lot of conflicting information about sloths on the internet, which is why you have to always cross-reference everything, especially diet, because this is not a natural diet for a sloth. And so there's been a lot of different trial and error and manipulation of that diet to figure out which works best. We're still working on that. I think our next project for Flash is to kind of extend that branch that he has, because a lot of people see just a little bit of our live and they're like, is that his enclosure? That's where he stays? And this is not where he stays, this is just where he does his encounters. But I think what we're going to try to do is possibly kind of loop it around a little bit more of the room, so that he has a little bit more area to kind of move around and explore, and for people to kind of see how he moves, because it is really interesting. And it's really interesting to see how he moves in his enclosure. So in there, they do have the really poor eyesight, but they do have good memory. And he kind of memorizes where all of those branches are at and everything. And so he uses basically the same way to go up and to come down, just because he's figured out that that's what works best and that's how he wants to do it. And so here's a little bit more. If he changes his mind like halfway through the other day, we let him back into his enclosure, and he was first headed up to his hammock, and then decided that, well, actually the outside door is open, and so I want to go outside for a little bit. And he had to change his mind halfway through and come down in a little bit of a different way than he usually does. And he was a lot slower with that process than usual, just because he never went down that way. And that's not something that he commonly does.
Heather, Joanne says that she's watching you.
Oh, Joanne.
Definitely come to Ocoee Riverside Farm.
Aw,
This is a fantastic experience, encounter. Everyone's so friendly.
We appreciate it. We do always tell people that kind of our thought process is that, obviously human safety is our number one concern, but animal comfort is second. That is the very close second thing that we focus on, because they don't have voices like we do, and we have to be their voices, because obviously we weren't raised by animals, and we maybe don't always pick up on certain behavioral things that they may do. He's doing some acrobatics above you right now.
Stretching those legs.
Jeez. But so we may not always pick up on if they're portraying some certain body language. We may not always understand what that means, and so it's our jobs to be able to understand the animals that we work with enough to be able to voice what they're thinking and how they're feeling, if they're comfortable with the situation or if they're uncomfortable, and be able to change and adapt to that. What are you doing, girl?
You'll think of you in a minute.
Yeah, it's been about half of our time. It's 11:15 right now, so if you guys wanted to switch now, or you guys wanted,
Don't give me a hug.
if you want to get a little, you put both your hands underneath her booty and kind of scooch her up there, she'll give you a little hug. And then after she has her belly full, that is the position she loves to be in. You can walk around where.
Yeah, get right over there. Go for it. It's all about you.
Those always make for good
Oh,
pictures.
look at those
But
legs.
it's funny to see the differences between even just Zoe and Dash. They both came from the same breeder. They were raised in the same way. they have the same conditioning, but there's a lot of differences between them. She smells that cup holder sometimes. I think somebody spilled something in there, and she
It's
gets really
me.
interested with.
It's my bad.
With what's in that cup holder there.
Where are you exploring, girl?
Sometimes she'll get a hold of that doorknob and she starts twisting on it, trying to see if she can open it up. She just gets exploratory. Yeah, her legs are really sensitive.
Take the big old yawn, girlfriend. Take the big old yawn, girlfriend. You gonna let her hold it?
You guys wanna transfer over now?
Yeah.
You won't have to do, no, you won't have to do anything. I'll get a hold over and I'll transfer on to you. I'll have you guys actually switch chairs just because if you're in the blue chair, you can actually kind of slouch back a lot more. And when you do that, it makes her feel a little bit more comfortable if you're leaned back rather than if you're leaning forward. So she'll wrap her legs around your torso first and then you can support underneath your booty. There we go. And then if you put both your hands underneath your booty and scooch her up just a little bit more, that may cue her in to go ahead and snuggle in around your neck there, since she got her belly full.
Just in love with you.
Hopefully it stays full here for a little bit, but in case it doesn't, there's some backups here. Sometimes when she's opening and closing her mouth like that, you can almost hear a little squeak sound. When you hear that, that's actually all of her teeth grinding together. They sharpen every time they open and close their mouths to keep it sharp enough where they can grind up the circumpolar leaves. Which, you know, can sound kind of scary because it's like, are they going to use those teeth on me? But it, you know, if you think about a leaf, grinding a leaf works better than kind of chomping it up. So.
She's got her toes right from my neck. It says,
That's what I need for her, have a seizure to pick her coming.
Yeah. I'm gonna text Donna and see if she's busy. What's your question earlier?
the big cuddle. It's so sweet, baby.
She
Oh, she may be looking for just a little bit
You
of
wanna
bigger.
see something else to eat?
Oh, yeah, it's belly sensitive.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot.
It's all right. It can be really tempting, especially when she's laid out like that. As for dogs and stuff too, they would like a lot of different types of scritches and scratches and
Yeah.
pats and stuff, but sloths are a lot different.
So good.
Hold you over.
don't have nothing for you.
Come here and just love me. I know you want something else.
She's gonna see if we have anything else for her before she decides to snuggle back in. Anything else, girl?
I don't have anything, baby.
I need her pockets or
I
something.
don't have anything, honey. Just love you. She liked you baby so much a little bit ago.
You can see how limber that spine is, Zoe. That spine is. They do have 3 extra vertebrae in their lumbar spine that allows them to actually rotate their spine all the way back to look back behind them.
Wow.
And then the 3-toed sloths, they don't have that vertebrae in their lumbar spine, they have it in their cervical spine. So they have the ability to be holding on all four onto a branch and rotate their neck all the way back to look back behind them.
So sweet. You're amazing. And you're very knowledgeable. Oh,
And so you wouldn't think it by looking at the outside of a sloth, but they're actually on the inside kind of built like trucks. They've got a total of 46 ribs, so that's double what we have, and that goes all the way down right up against their hip bones. So they kind of have a protective casing or shell around them on the inside that protects their internal organs and everything, and they have a lot of connective tissue that's holding to their body cavity and all of their organs to keep everything right where it's supposed to, so that when they're turned completely upside down or putting themselves into different positions, their insides aren't getting jumbled around or anything like that. And that's what allows them to be able to withstand falls from up to 100 feet in the air.
I don't have nothing, baby, I'm sorry. At least they don't have teeth in the front.
Yeah. Yeah. She does explore a lot with her teeth too. Sometimes if she's got her arms, or her teeth, her gums, when she's got her arms all the way out, she's been reaching for you, and if you're not giving her anything, she'll lock her claws together and she'll like start gumming on her own little feet there. So, she's very much like a toddler. She sees Flash moving around up there right now.
Well, I'm canine officer, so I'm probably sure I'll get bit a few times.
Those are probably much faster bites than one like this ever would be.
And like, what's he doing up there?
He's not getting nothing deep right now. No, he's not. I know, baby.
She's very plump today, and it's been about 5 days since she's gone to the bathroom, so probably this evening. It's always in the evenings that they go to the bathroom, and they never, a lot of people worry about if they have an accident on them or something, but they never would go on someone. What they have to do is come down to the base of the tree, wrap their legs around that tree, and they actually scoot their booty around on the ground.
Yeah, I watched the video.
Yeah, when they go to the bathroom, so they would never go on someone.
He's up there like,
And there was once that Zoe kind of was off her schedule, where she actually went in the middle of the day once, and that was like 2 weeks ago. It was actually right after we had an encounter with her, and so she held it. You know, I could tell she was antsy during that encounter, and she was just kind of wiggling around a lot, and just was seeming uncomfortable. And then right after we got done with the encounter, I set her into her hammock, and immediately she went to go to the bathroom. And so she would not, she holds it all the time when she's on people. Most of the time, it's always in the evenings or through the night that she'll go, but if she does have a weird movement where it's in the middle of the day, she would wait till she get back to her enclosure.
could you not just do that all?
Flash.
A sloth cuddler.
Yeah.
She just randomly gets in these really exploratory moods. She'll be completely snuggled in, and all of a sudden it's like, ooh, doorknob. Or will just stuff her face down into that cup holder there of the mesh, or start licking around on the cup holder. And there's plenty more veggies over here too if you wanted to feed her any of this now that you've got your hands free, whatever you want to do.
Are you hungry? Let me feed you. Are you hungry, girlfriend?
She always expects snacks anytime we get her out here for an encounter.
How long have you been here?
I've been here for almost 3 months.
Gosh. You're really great with them.
Thank you. I actually just got engaged on Sunday to the owner's son, so.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
Well, you'll be here a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big.
This is family.
And John was joking around with me, he was like, I didn't know I was hiring a sloth keeper and my future daughter-in-law. Like, yeah.
Looking over.
Thank you.
You're such a good girl. So.
Okay, I'm sister.
Looking like
Yeah, somebody said the other day that we should offer a sloth naps, like put a little lazy boy in here and
Oh,
just have like.
I promise you I do that.
Yeah. They're very, it's calming.
Yeah, it is, especially when she's up around your neck like that. Not that piece? She says, oh, I've got an itch.
Did it itch? No, she's not done.
Yeah.
You're so sweet.
So we do only have the ant or something.
Always open, you got to do that.
It's,
You ready?
Well, we do just have the two-toed sloths here in captivity. The three-toed sloths, the ones I said have that sensitive diet. There's a lot of differences between the two. One of the biggest ones being that the two-toed sloths get to be a lot bigger. They can get up to be like 20 pounds. And then the three-toed sloths, sometimes they're referred to as like dwarfs or pygmies, just because they only get to be like 10 pounds is about what they max out at. Those usually tend to be a lot lighter in color, and you can actually determine their sex by the markings that they have on their backs.
Oh.
So the males, actually, the hair on their backs are a lot shorter, and there's specific markings for how to tell if they're male or female. But for the two-toed sloths, you have to do genetic testing for them. All of their reproductive organs are inside. There's nothing that's external, and so you can't tell by just looking at them which one's male, which one's female.
so sweet. Oh my goodness.
And then the three-toed sloths are the ones that, a lot of times the traditional sloth picture that you'll see is they've got the brown darker marking across their eyes. They look like they're smiling, and a lot of times you'll see pictures of them where they're hanging all 4 feet onto the branch, and they've actually got their neck turned all the way back to look at the camera that's behind them, because the 3 vertebrae that the 2-fingered have in their lumbar spine, the 3-fingered have in their cervical spine in their neck. And then the 3-fingered sloth actually has just a little bit of a tail at the end. So it's thought that the 3-fingered sloths actually have even more moths on them that live all throughout their fur, because what they do when they come down to use the bathroom is they actually use that tail and they kind of swirl around in their dung pile. And it's really gross, but they require that direct contact, those moths, to be able to get up onto the sloth. So for the 3-toed sloths, it works out a lot easier for them to get a whole lot more moths up on them through that very direct contact. But that's about the only type of grooming that we do for them. They don't have any natural scent glands, musk glands, oil glands, anything like that. And so we don't really have to do a whole lot of hygiene upkeep for them. But sometimes when they go to the bathroom, they come down, they wiggle their little booties around down too low on the ground, and sometimes they'll get a few little dingleberries, and we have to wash that off. But that's about the only thing we have to do for them. But the sloths are really the cleanest animal that we have on the whole farm. They don't have any sort of natural musk or odor to them. And so they're pretty much, they're not like wild sloths that have the moss and algae and things like that that grow on them. And so they're not very, they're pretty clean animals. And a lot of people are prepared when they come that they've got like long sleeves on, got to change
Like
their
they're
clothes
gonna
because they think that they're going to be gross, but they are very clean animals.
Well done.
Worked out right at Tom because it is 11:30 now. So
You're so sweet.
I'll get her from you, and then we'll watch Flash actually go back up into his enclosure, because it is pretty neat to see how he goes back up there.
I love you, sweet girl.
You got your this way.
Second love. Mine's 4.
Oh! You want me to run? He loves to just run around. He's alright and let him kind of venture around.
She's like, I'm
See
really
ya.
escape.
Flash wants to go back up.
You're so cute.
Come on, bud. Go back inside.
Thank you, Flash.
And you guys are welcome to walk in there too. Sometimes you get a lot better pictures if you walk in ahead of him and you actually see him go up.
Very cool.
that's where he'll stay for a while until we start to have another encounter, because most of the times what he does is we'll be out here having another encounter with Zoe or something. And he'll hear us down here feeding Zoe, and so he'll come back out for We'll head out here and we'll sanitize our hands one more time. I did text Donna, so I'll check on her and see if she responded. You guys will do that? Let me hear my phone real quick.